Welcome to the Multitasking Maven Show. If you're tired of saying, I don't have time for that, you're in the right place. I help busy moms organize their time and get the most out of their days through videos, tips, interviews, and workshops. After taking one of my productivity workshops, Carol had to say, amazing! You've given me back at least 5 hours a week. If you would like to find time in your schedule, make sure to go to multitaskingmaven.com right there on the homepage and register. Now, let's get into today's episode. So today's episode is all about the 5 tips that I recommend for anyone who is getting started in their own business. And I'm going to use my 5 tips based on my 14 years of experience of running my own business. But before we get started, I'm going to give you the backstory on how all of that really started. So over 16 years ago, I attended my first seasonal children's consignment sale. And if you don't know what a seasonal children's consignment sale is, they meet twice a year. And typically it's not a garage sale, it's not a yard sale. It's where a lot of women get together, they bring in their items of clothing and toys, accessories, all those things that your children can't wear, and they sell them. But it's all set up like a department store. So my friend invited me to my first one, and I was like, I don't want to go do this. And after that first one, I was completely hooked. I mean, I was buying brands at a fraction of retail. I still have the main toy. We still have that main toy that we bought at that first sale for my son. And after that first one, I was hooked. And so I probably participated in this particular sale for 3 or 4 years. And at the time I was a pharmaceutical rep. But my background was in marketing and public relations. And so in order for me to shop earlier and have the opportunity to shop earlier, I would do public relations and get the media out there, television, all that sort of thing. And there was an opportunity where this particular sale said, oh, I'm going to franchise. And I hopped on it. And they never franchised, but I hopped on it and I launched my first event. I was 8 months pregnant. It was October, which was way past consignment sale season, and people had to pay to park. It was not a recipe for success by any means. I launched with 100 consigners, and if we fast forward to today, 14 years later, my event is larger than Target. And I cap registration at 750 consigners. We can't take any more because we can't take any more items. We have about 120,000 items. The event itself is run by over 400 volunteers. We have 50 staff members, and I have delegated, so now I have team leaders and I actually have a director that runs the event, and we do this twice a year. And while it sounds very grandiose, which it is, it's not something that happened overnight. From the humble beginnings of me being 8 months pregnant with my 3rd child, where people had to pay to park, there have been a lot of things that have happened along the way. We started out in a more of an urban space, a downtown space, and we were just nickel and dimed for everything, whether it was for power or internet cords, all of these things. And so we took a leap of faith, and we literally kind of leapt out into the country among cow pastures, and we have never looked back. That is when we became more of a community event, a community sale. And, but that also brought challenges. I remember, when we first went, people really did not, the event center that we were working with, they really didn't give us a lot in terms of thinking that we would be successful there. And we had signed a 5-year lease for about 10,000 square feet. So it was a smaller space. And after the first season, we outgrew it. And so then we moved to the big building. And I was really nervous because at the time, I think we maybe got 35,000 square feet. And after that first event, we were already spreading into the back of that building, where now we fill 80,000 square feet. But along the way, there are challenges. For us, A perfect sale is when we have enough consigners and enough shoppers. So it's that correct balance, and it's not having too many of one or too many of the other. I remember when we went through a huge growth spurt after making our first move out to the cow pasture, it was an hour and a half wait. You literally had to wait an hour and a half in order to check out. And I can't believe people came back the next season. Obviously we make adjustments, we made changes, and people kept coming back. We had a time where it snowed. It was in the springtime and it snowed. And I probably had 50 or 60 volunteers in there, what we call breaking down the sale. So if items are not sold, then we return them back to the consigners. So in order to do that, we have to pull all consignor 100 stuff, put it in a pile. All consignor 101, put it in a pile. And there's a system, a rhyme, a reason to all of this. But a snowstorm came in. And we were in the middle of this breakdown where my consigners were picking up the next morning. The sheriff comes and says, "You've got to leave or you're going to get snowed in." I'm like, what? But it all worked out. We had another time where there were hurricane spottings, and I had lanes, 15. We have 15 computer lanes. So we have 15 lanes packed with people, like 20 deep each lane, and there are hurricane sightings. And I'm just like, what if the power goes out? What if, all of the things that you're thinking of in this moment? It never happened. We never had a hurricane, but it's still, all of these things you learn. And I'll end kind of with the bad thing was we write checks, obviously, to our consigners to participate with us. And my sister does that portion of the event. And she has a check writing program. We have a check writing, all of that system is down. And it crashed. Well, she started it back. Well, when she started it back, it did not put all of the numbers of our account. So we had about 100 checks that were affected by the fact that this computer program crashed. We tried to restart it because obviously, we've got to get the checks out to the consigners. So all of that to say, I've learned a lot in 14 years. I've been put through a lot in 14 years. But there have been things that have resulted. I think one of the big reasons why I started, number one, I was in the season of life where at the time when I launched, I only had 3 children. And ultimately, now we have 4 children. But I was in a season of life that doing children's consignment, all that made sense. It was important for me, and really my why was that I really wanted to carve out space and time that was just for me. And I had always loved the whole idea about being an entrepreneur and about running my own business. That was the one thing that I wanted to do. And this allowed me to keep my full-time job as a pharmaceutical rep, be a mom of 3, now 4 children, and also be able to run my own business. And it's a big business. I mean, when you're talking about this little mini city, it's amazing to me, and I'm still humbled by it, that I can stand in the middle of 80,000 square feet and just see the activity, moms and dads and grandparents and aunts and uncles and kids and moms to be go through the whole process, from setup to pre-sales to shopping to discount to breakdown to packing it all up. It's literally, it's like moving every 6 months. It's a great nesting activity that I do every 6 months. And we've done it now for 14 years. So based on the 14 years of experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of the things that I've learned, I have 5 tips that I want to share with you. If you are thinking about running your own business, or maybe you have your own business already. One of the biggest things that I think is important to note is that what works for someone else doesn't always work for you. Now, I could say that I learned a lot from my first experiences with children's consignment sale. But all of those different activities and things that worked in one state didn't necessarily work for me and where I was with my event. It's almost 2 totally different events. So I don't want you to think if you buy a course, or maybe you're using someone that you're modeling, a mentor, that what they're doing is always going to work for you. You're going to have to shift and move and do things that are going to work for you and going to work for your audience. There's really, I don't feel, a cookie cutter business where you can walk into and get absolutely the same results as someone else. Number one. Number two, and this is a big one. These are all pretty big. Never compare your beginning to someone else's middle. I did this. In the beginning, I always compared myself to that original sale that I attended and that I was involved with. I wanted it so bad. I couldn't handle it when I first started, obviously. But I launched with 100 consigners. And I should have celebrated that. I should have celebrated that I was able to fill 10,000 square feet, that we were able to do a successful event from beginning to end, being 8 months pregnant. Instead, I compared myself and said, I only have 100. She's got 650. Now, mind you, she had been doing it probably at the time 6, 8, maybe 10 years in, and this was my first season. But you put your blinders on there and you think that when you start, it needs to be just as good as someone who has been doing this for a really long time. And we compare ourselves and we get down on ourselves. Instead, we should celebrate our victories. Number three, stop thinking about it and just do it. I'm in a lot of private Facebook groups, and I see sometimes these questions about businesses, about people questioning their business. Should they do this? Should they do that? And the thing is, I just say push publish, push go, push play. You've got to try. And it almost kind of refers back to that number one thing. What works for you is maybe not going to work for me. I can give you a foundation. I can give you a framework to work off of, but you're going to have to cater it, and you're going to have to specialize it to you and to your audience. All right. Number four is to know you and your schedule and be realistic. So when I started my business, I was a pharmaceutical rep, which was a really demanding job. And really, the children's consignment sale was almost a backup plan. Okay. It was a backup plan. Of course, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and it just made sense during the season of life that I was in, having 4 children in 5 years. I mean, it was just great. Over the 14 years that I've been doing this, I have literally not paid for my children's clothing, and I have saved thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So all of that made sense. Also along the way, that entrepreneurial bug continued to bite me. And in some instances, I would take some of my earnings and I would reinvest it into other business ideas, because I'm just a passionate entrepreneur. One of the opportunities that I thought was a great idea, was to launch a children's manufacturing company. It was really important to me, everything made here in the USA. And so I went to an area where the textile industry just really had just been crushed. Everything went overseas. And so I was able to employ some seamstresses, cutters, that sort of thing. And I started selling on Facebook. And at first it was really manageable. 10 orders a day. We were able to we did the custom work, and we were able to do it and send it out. Everything was great. Well, all of a sudden, after Thanksgiving, the sky fell. And we went from like 10 orders to 100 orders. And that is, I am not exaggerating. I would drive 30 minutes. I would be at my shop at 6 a.m. I would be cutting out these orders. People would come in. We went from 1 seamstress to 4. I had an embroiderer, I had a packager, I had a shipper. It was successful in that we did $40,000 in sales in a very short period of time. And you're like, well, that's amazing. But I was the most miserable that I have ever been. That was a horrible holiday. People are really mean. And it was just one of those things that during that period, or during that phase of life that I was in, I couldn't homeschool. I couldn't do some of the things that I needed to get done because I was at the shop working. And you're like, well, you asked for that. And I'm like, yeah, I did ask for that. And one of the things, I'm going to go back to number 3, stop thinking about it and just doing it. It's an experience that I'll never forget, but it's never going to be one of those things, oh, I wish I would have, because I did it. And for me, the time and my season of life and really the priority of being with my children and homeschooling, that was the choice that I made. So when we shipped out that last order, December 15th, I shut it down, and that was the end of my manufacturing experience. I never want to do another product-based business again. It's just, I know that about myself now. I don't daydream. I think sometimes we can get in the car, or we're listening to a podcast, or we're thinking about an idea, or we see a blogger doing XYZ, and we think we can do it too. And you could do it. But the question that you really need to ask yourself, the season of life that you're in, do you have littles? Are your kids toddlers? Are they in elementary school? Are they in high school? Are they gone? Do you have a full-time job? What's going on in your home? These are all things that factor into being really realistic with your time. And it's something that I have battled kind of off and on, but I know my priority is making sure my kids graduate, go off to school, do the things that they want to do, being available to them here. But I also know that within my time and my space, it is important for me to carve out something that makes sense with my time now. All right. And then number 5, I'm going to say, is to accept change, because change is always going to happen. I know in the pharmaceutical industry, we would be going down one path, and then all of a sudden we'd have to switch over to another path, and then we would have to switch over to another path. What you start out with is going to look very different 6 months, 12 months from now. Again, you just need to take action. And I'm going to give a bonus, and some may disagree, but I find that there is no real work-life balance. I think that that is a myth. I think that you have to put those things that are a priority first, and then you have to manage your time, schedule your time. Depending, again, on the season of life that you're in, it's going to be, or it could be, a lot more challenging. When I started my sale, I was 8 months pregnant, walking on concrete floors, 10,000 square feet. Through the course of my 14 years, I added another child. I went through another pregnancy during an event, and then actually Jack was born, and I still carried him, or I had him in a stroller. Luckily, our sale was really, really small at the time, so it was manageable. But, as far as, the work-life balance, there's always going to be, as a mother, those demands on your schedule, whether it's homemaking, getting the dinner on the table, getting to soccer practice, getting to dance, making sure a blog post is going to be published on time. Someone is always going to fight for your schedule. So you have to be at peace with that, and you have to give yourself grace with that. What are the things that you're just going to let go? Because it's important for you that you have something that's for yourself, that you've carved out that space, right? So it could be, all right, my house is not going to be the cleanest, or, I'm not going to be able to go out with my friends all the time, or I'm not going to be watching television at night. Those things, the give and flow, or the give and take, rather, are things that are going to help you in terms of trying to keep that balance in place, right? But the biggest thing is to give yourself grace. So those are really my 5 tips based on my 14 years of a wild ride of running my own business. And one of the things that I want you to know is that I want to be your Disney Fast Pass. I've always said that I will be your virtual cheerleader. So I'm here to cheer you on. In transitioning to online business, I know one of my truest passions is to encourage, to motivate, and to teach other women. I do that with a couple of the partnerships that I have in different online businesses, and I want to do that here at Multitasking Maven. So what I've done for you in terms of helping you, whether you are a new business or whether you are a seasoned business, because I think it's always important as a seasoned business to always be checking in. What's working? What's not working? If you are someone who wants to start a business, then thinking about those ideas that you want to do. Is it running a blog? Is it selling a product? Maybe it's you do handmade items. You love product-based business, whether it's Etsy. I mean, all of these opportunities are open to us now. And what we've done for you this week in order to explore that is that Rachel has put together a wonderful worksheet. And it really breaks things down, and it helps you, again, take it out of your brain and put it on a piece of paper. And I think that visualization, so we're not carrying around all these ideas and we think they're realistic, but when we actually sit down and look at it, it's really warped and it doesn't make sense. So what we have for you this week is to take a look at your week. I want you to be very honest with yourself. Number one, we're going to take a look at, if you currently have a business or you're getting ready to launch a business, what is the quarter goal? I want you to focus down just on the first 3 months of this year. I don't want to talk about what's going to be happening in December. We want to focus right now where we are. Number two, business ideas. I want you to brainstorm different business ideas. If you haven't launched anything, what is it that you want to do? I did recently have an interview with Abby Ashley, and she suggests becoming a virtual assistant. If you are thinking about running a blog or doing any of that, I highly, highly, highly recommend being a service provider first, because people are paying you to get experience. And I will put a link to that episode here. But I've given you an opportunity to brainstorm different business ideas. Finally, if you are a seasoned business, it's really important, with my event, we always get together, our team members get together, what worked and what didn't work. And what didn't work is always like this huge glaring thing, like that 1.5-hour wait that people had. That would never, ever happen again, right? So what can we do to help fix those things that are not working? And typically each season, I don't have any more than 2 big goals that I want to accomplish. Because when I can really center in and focus on 1 to 2 things, I can be more successful. All right. So those things that are working, how can we make those things work even better? Those things that aren't working, what is it that we need to focus down in? And the reason why I've given you this worksheet is that now you can always go back and reference that quarter goal. It's visual to you. You can see that, and everything will really start to come together. Finally, I talked about in one of the 5 tips is to be realistic with your time. I have done it. I will be listening to a podcast, and I think this new way of doing something is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm all by myself. It is peaceful. I'm not in the hecticness of my schedule, and I think I can do it. Friends, what I want you to do is I've given you slots for every single point in your week. I want you to be realistic with your schedule. You may think you have 20 hours to work when realistically you have 4. All right. And again, it's that work-life balance. What are the sacrifices that you're willing to make? How fast are you going to be able to progress in your business? You can figure that out, and you can really start to see that by filling out this worksheet. Rachel does a fantastic job. I love all of her printables that she does. So I hope that this episode was helpful. It gives you a little bit of insight into the success that I've had over the past 14 years, some of the challenges that I've had over the past 14 years, but most importantly, my why is my family. But I don't want to say more importantly, but equally as important is that to carve out that space and that time that is just for me, and so that I don't lose my identity of who I am. Before I entered into the relationship with my husband, almost 25 years going on being married, or being a mom to 4 kids, having those children, 4 and 5 years, that is a lot of work. That is a lot of losing your identity. And so I can totally relate. I want to be that Disney Fast Pass. I want to jump you in front of the line. Make sure that you check out the printable that we've put together for you this week. And I've put some other links in today's episode for other previous episodes that I think can be helpful for you. All right, take care. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes and links, go to multitaskingmaven.com. Remember, register for the Manage Mama Overwhelm Productivity Workshop so I can help you find time in your busy schedule. We'll see you soon.